So maybe we should talk about what apocolites are.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna give my impression, and you tell me what you think.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
So, apocolites. So, I mean, there are your kind of normal citizens of the afterlife, who are in a lot of ways just like humans on Earth. They kind of walk around, and they're susceptible to getting injured just like any regular human is on Earth. Um,
Hmm.
but if you're an apocolite, and there are a pretty small number of apocolytes, but an apocolite, number one, they I think always have a wisp blade. Um,
Yes. For
and
the most part, yes.
okay, and a wisp blade, I think that's kind of where their powers come from, more or less. But they are physically just kind of superhuman. I picture um like in Marvel, like a super soldier, like
Yeah.
Captain
So
America or something like that. So they're just more resilient. They can't be hurt as much, um, or as easily, and at the same time, they also have a wisp blade, which grants them special powers depending on the color of the blade.
hmm. Yeah.
Um, and so they're kind of like, a little bit like superheroes maybe, and they serve kind of like as generals. Like if you think of like Jedi in the Clone Wars, serving.
Yeah.
Uh, they kind of like lead armies, and there's also this prophecy that involves them. There's oh yeah, and there's also this rule that there's, I think, 10 of them per universe. Is that right?
It's supposed to be 10. But
Right. So
that's
so in theory there are 10 of them for all the 9 universes, and then the 10 of them serve under the Thane or the king of that universe.
hmm.
And
Yeah,
then the Thanes of each universe serve under the king who's in charge of everybody, and that's the god, like.
yeah. And that whole thing with 10 on each universe, that's not some universal code. That's the king's law.
Right.
And people break the law all the time. If you
Right.
know what
So
I mean. Like,
yeah. And I think maybe the best example of that is the Sun Nation.
yes. Yeah,
Um
the Sun Nation is the other continent on Universe 8.
yeah.
Um and they have apocalypse in large numbers, like hundreds of them. And it's almost like they just appeared naturally over there. They're not selected. It's like, you know, but we haven't gotten to the
And
Sun Nation books yet, so
yeah. Yeah, well, what's important too about the Sun Nation is that it's the only independent entity, at least of note, in all of the universes. Like all the universes are loyal to the king.
mhm.
King, so like all of them are, except the Sun Nation, which is just one continent in Universe 8, is totally independent. It's not being ruled by Gregoros, and they have their own kind of leadership. I think they have, some kind of democracy or something.
Yeah, they're kind of like they're kind of neo-libs, like
Yeah.
they're like they're very similar to like America in a lot of ways, like, but they have a republic sort of government, but like they have a bunch of different political parties and sort of they have everything from a workers party to like a nationalist party over there. And
Okay.
there's a lot of bureaucracy and things like that. And but they also have an apocalypse synod, which is like sort of a religious center, like, or a religion centered around Wisp, which their apocalypses are all supposed to be a part of. So because there are so many apocalypses, and actually that considering the power apocalypses have, there's maybe evidence there to support that's why they're independent, because Gregoros like can't take them. You know what I mean? Like, cause
Right.
like they've established like no, you don't get to rule us. Like, and we have the like strength to back it up. Like, you know what I mean?
Sure. So, okay. So this leads to another interesting thing and this is all kind of, lore, this doesn't occur in the book, but there is this great war that in the past happened between Sun's or sorry, the Sun Nation and Thane's Isle, which is the other continent that is loyal to the
Mm-hmm.
king. And they had this great war that I think it was basically a draw at the end, but like
Yeah, it
both
was the Moon
like
Sea
heavy
War.
losses. Yeah, right, the Moon Sea War, and uh, and it was just so terrible for both sides that they really don't want to do it again. Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's kind of like a Cold War situation right now where they oppose each other, but they're afraid to attack each other.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of the reason why Sun Nation fears Thane's Isle so much, even though they have all these apocolites, is because they have a lot of blue steel in Thane's Isle.
Mm-hmm. And
So
and as we just mentioned, blue steel is like the kryptonite to apocolites.
yeah,
And that was like that was something when I was like originally writing this, I was just like, okay, these people can't like apocolites can't just be like unkillable gods. Like there has to be a foil to everything. Like not like there's a foil to blue steel, and that like it's kind of like a rock paper scissors situation
oh,
where
interesting.
if the apocolite is strong enough, their wisp can just crack right through blue steel. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
but it takes a very long time for the wisp blade to become tempered, so and currently, where Thane's Isle sits, most of the Apocolites are all rookies. So
See.
they don't have access to their full powers. Their blades can't be drawn for long periods of time before it starts to tax their bodies physically.
Uh-huh.
Um, you know, and that's not really shown in book one. It's shown more in book two. Um, but like because Jeremiah struggles with his wisp blade a lot. But Ben kind of um Ben actually doesn't really use the wisp a lot at all. Like it's kind of like somebody made a joke that like the you can sum up book one with kid gets magic sword, doesn't use it. Like
You pretty much. I think he uses it like all of one time, maybe or something
yeah,
like.
right. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So we've got the okay. So actually, and this is another thing that's probably kind of a good to cover, just because I was a little bit confused by it when reading. There's a lot of different factions and a lot of different wars going on, or that have
Hmm.
happened. So, number one, there was the Rift War, which is what caused all the universes to separate, and that was eons. Like I don't know how long ago, but
That
a very
was
long.
about 135 years ago.
Oh, so it wasn't okay. Not even as long as I thought. Okay,
Yeah.
so 135 years ago.
Well, but it's 135 afterlife years. And
Wait, so how long is an afterlife here?
that's well because they don't know the size of the afterlife, it's hard to say, but it's much longer than an earth year. Like if you notice the dates. So if you're reading the book, you notice it starts on July the 29th. And slowly but surely the date goes up and it goes up to July 31st. But then the next date after that is July the 32nd, and then the 33rd, the 44th. And where I am now in book 5, it's July the 54th. Like and,
Okay.
and it like doesn't like some people say each month is 182 and a half days long, and 182 and a half times 2 is 365. People have come up with all of these wacky date systems, and that's partially because I didn't set up a time system when I started to write it. But the way I dug myself out of that hole, which is something you have to do as a writer a lot, especially with something this massive, is like like nobody like part of the Gregorian rule is that the people under him are constantly confused. Like it's like a psyop. Like they don't know what year it is. Because 27 Age of Gregoros, there's a scene in book 5 that won't spoil anything, but Desiree, or no, not Desiree, this other character is sitting in a graveyard, like just fell asleep in a graveyard after like this battle. It was the only place they could get peace and quiet. And they're leaning up against a headstone, and they turn around and they see the date is 77B like AR to 130 AR. And they're like, what does that mean? Like Age of Rhynek? Like, you know, because Rhynek was an old king back in the day. But it actually means after Rift. So there's been a lot of date and calendar changes for the purpose of confusing the populace. So so no one knows how long a year actually is. No one knows, like, you know, it's just whenever Gregoros says the new year is, that's when it is.
Okay, so this guy's got a lot of power.
Yeah, like the entire media for Thane's Isle, for the most part, is entirely under Gregoros's thumb.
Sure.
Even though he might not be influencing it directly, a lot of it is like that's why he has his underlings, because he can't control an entire planet sized entity by himself, right? He
Hmm.
has to like there's the conductor, there's the ministry of the clock, there's the thanes, and then the apocolites are like the angels, the enforcers, you know. They
Sure.
But anyway, I don't remember what we were talking about before I went on that rant.
Yeah,
But
no, that's helpful. But we were just talking about the various wars that have happened. So there was the Rift War, which is quite a while ago. Maybe we don't know really how to measure that, but um, the Rift War, and that's kind of what separated all the continents, or all the I shouldn't say continents, all the universes, and then we had this Moon Sea War, which happened in the recent past, I guess, more
hmm
recent past, where we
yeah,
had the Sun Nation fight against the Thane's Isle, and now they're kind of in this Cold War, this like kind of stalemate situation. Not
and
wanting to repeat that,
and I
but then
should I should mention there was
yeah.
one before that too.
Oh,
That is revealed later, but it's called the War of 7-8, and it was basically the Moon Sea War, but Universe 7 was also involved.
oh, interesting.
And that one was a Sun Nation victory. Like they like routed both areas, but that's a whole other thing. The Moon Sea War, yeah, was a basically it started over Oilton. It was like an oil war, and it was a territory grab where the Sun Nation wanted a lot of the Light Child Islands for trade, because the Light Child Islands just kind of snake their way down the south, uh, ending right off the coast of Thane's Isle, and they were going to use those as like trade ports and things, but you know, that would have been way too much territory because the Sun Nation already is enormous. It's like double the size of Thane's Isle. And they, like, you know, they fought this war basically over Oiltons, which before that it was known as the Black Hill Islands, and it was an independent nation. And the Sun Nation and Thane's Isle sacked it and destroyed it.
Mm.
And but there were also sea battles. The Great Bridge was blown up. The and that was a massive apocalypse made construction going across the entirety of the Moon Sea. um and yeah, there were sea battles everywhere. The Northern Isles were destroyed. Many of the smaller Light Child Islands were destroyed, and yeah, just whole destruction, you know. And they don't
Okay.
want to repeat that.
Right. Yes. So they are not trying to do that again. But then at the same time, currently there is a war happening in Thane's Isle, which is
Yes.
northern parts of the Isle are in active revolt against the leadership,
Mm-hmm.
against the king really and the Thane. Uh, and
Yeah.
what is it like the socialist something or what is it?
Yeah,
The
it's the Second Afterliffian People's Republic.
Oh,
Re-
People's Republic. Okay.
Republic
Um
spelt with a K, so you know it's edgy.
yeah, yeah, right. So they're in active revolution, like they are trying to secede
Mm-hmm.
and become their own, entity. So uh so Universe 8 kind of goes hard. Uh
Yeah.
is what I'd say. They're kind of just because as far as I know, all the other universes, they're all just loyal to the king.
As far as we know,
As far I get, yeah, sure. Um
people will always be people,
yeah,
and
but
that's all I
well, that
can
being
say
said,
about that. You know,
the other universes have like dinosaurs and stuff though too, or some of them do.
Universe 3 is the dinosaur one, but there are also
Yeah.
people there. So when we get to the Universe 3 book, we'll get to see. Well, the dinosaurs show up on Universe 8, but I don't want to spoil that too much. But the Stegosaurus brothers have quickly become fan favorites of people who have read books 3 and 4. One is named Steg, the other's named Saurus. You can't go wrong.
I mean, yeah, you can't not like that.
But
uh,
yeah, and like Universe 2 has the last living Neanderthals on the Afterlife. The
oh,
Cro-Magnon are extinct. Um, you know, and actually the by the time the story starts, um, well, actually that's a whole other the destruction of the previous 7 universes is a whole like thing that we could go into, but
oh yeah. Well,
you
okay.
know.
So I was just kind of trying to set up, what Ben is walking into when he enters the afterlife here. I mean,
Yeah, like no wonder he's stressed out, you
yeah.
know, like he's just
So
like, what is this place? Like,
so he enters into Universe 8. There's magical powers. He's an apocolite. He's got all this power that he doesn't understand. Meanwhile, you know, the area that he walks into is actively at war, and he's in the part of Thane's Isle that is loyal to Thane's Isle, but
yeah.
he is quickly made aware that there's a part of the continent that's in revolt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably like 600 miles north of him is a terrible, terrible place.
Yeah.
Like,
Um,
but
and he's like, what's going on? And then it turns out that actually, he's pretty sought after by two parties, by the Sun Nation and Thane's Island. They both
uh
want,
well,
and so
so that
now
kind
he's
of
caught in the middle of this conflict as well.
that
So
kind of leads us into chapter 3, which is the first time we see a character that isn't Ben. Chapter 3 is from the perspective of his grandfather, who died a year or a few years after Ben, but showed up on the afterlife 40 years before Ben did. So Peter had time to get himself settled on the Sun Nation. His entire family showed up, and they're all apocolites on the Sun Nation, except for Peter. He's the only one who isn't, for whatever reason. Part of the deal, let's just say. And he joins the Navy at age 74 or 80 something. Hello, AJ Raider. How's it going? We're just doing a podcast about my novel series. Um, but anyway, he joins like he's 80 earthen years old, but all of a sudden his body just works like he's like 40 again, right? And he's like, okay, I'll join the Navy. I like ships. And he fights in the Moonsea War, and then like is just like becomes like a rises the ranks all the way to captain during that time, and he's the captain of the pride of the Sun Nation fleet, the SNCV Abraham. And SNCV stands for Sun Nation Capital Vessel. So that's like their USS, you know. Whereas the KN in Thane's Isle stands for Knights Navy. But uh where were we? And anyway, so Peter um knows Ben is eventually going to show up on Universe 8 on Thane's Isle, and it's kind of unclear how this goes about, but he convinces the president, the Apocolites Synod, and like a bunch of other sort of political entities that they can go get Ben and bring him back to the Sun Nation and like have one of the chosen Apocolites of legend as one of the Sun Nation's loyal Synod members. And
Okay, so I'm going to stop you right there just because I don't think we've talked about the prophecy yet.
oh yeah, that's right, we haven't.
So there's a prophecy which is believed by the king and the king's subjects that there's a chosen five apocolites who are going to show up to expel the Dark Lord, right?
Yeah, well,
Well, we
Dark
haven't even
Lord
talked about
is,
that yet either. But.
yeah, well, some sort of malevolent force that only they can stop. But I actually have the prophecy here. Um, it's where the hell is it? It's chapter 1. Let me see. Okay, so the prophecy reads as follows. Sagittarius blooms among the five. The ending ushers a beginning. Sagittarius closes around the heaviest hearts, the unrelenting heroes, the chosen five. The tomes form the path seeks a consciousness to occupy. Not a very straightforward prophecy.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's pretty abstract.
Yeah, but people take that and they see like people know there is a prophecy. Some people know the words, but very few people know what it means. The chosen five don't know what it mean. Like they're just like, what the hell? Like can you like explain? Like Ben even says right after that, what the hell does that mean? Ben shouted as tears flowed down his face. Why can't I understand? Like, you
Yeah.
know. So,
So basically, we've got the chosen the chosen five who I think we've been the people under the king have been waiting a while for them to show up, and they happen to be Ben and his four bandmates that also died in the incident
mhm.
on
And
Earth.
it should be noted that it is very rare that people find each other on the afterlife. Like a husband and wife, brother and sister, whatever have you. Um, it's not common for people to reunite because it is so big and time is not a line all the time there. So the fact that Peter showed up 40 years before Ben, he could have died before Ben even showed up. You know what I mean? And
Right.
like the fact that five people know each other, were alive at the same time, at the same age group, and are all apocolites under the same thing, that's weird. Like that has never, like none of the other five apocolites in Zenzel's group called a Karis in the story. None of them knew each other. One is from Latvia, another is from Poland, a third is from France, and one is from Italy, and then the last is a Pawnee Native American. And they all lived in different time periods and at different, you know, like so these chosen five were chosen together But the prophecy is so vague and intentionally confusing because like it's not exactly, it doesn't tell them like, oh, like Macbeth is evil and he's gonna kill the king, and stuff or stuff like that. It's like, um, yeah, I mean, what do you kind of take away from the prophecy? Like, what's like your sort of like what do you think it means? If you can,
I have no idea. I would need to hear you read it again, honestly.
okay,
I mean, if you want to read it, you can.
yeah, I will.
Okay.
Sagittarius blooms among the five. The ending ushers a beginning. Sagittarius closes around the heaviest hearts, the unrelenting heroes, the chosen five. The tomes form the path. The path seeks a consciousness to occupy.
Okay. So, a lot of it's just like, oh, we're gonna enter in a new age. That the end ushers the beginning, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it mentions the five. The last part is what really stands out to me,
Mm-hmm.
since um, there is this dark force, Lumiere, or right,
Yeah.
which
Uh,
is funny because I think that means light, but it's a dark force.
yeah,
Uh,
so there's some funny lore stuff with Lumiere. So the original guy who became the Lumiere the first, and there have been 10 Lumieres who have accepted this dark entity in them, for lack of a better term, and have become effectively these dark, like dark apocolites, but they're like different because they don't control Wisp in the same way. Like they they seek to just destroy everything, to eradicate life, boil the oceans, crumble the mountains to sand, and remove the afterlife from existence. That is like their ultimate goal. Is they want the afterlife gone. They don't think it should exist at all. And the original guy who did that, his name was Lumen Malheur. But scribes and stupid people wrote it as Lumiere.
uh, uh,
The guy was probably French who wrote it down. And then as other religions came in, like Christians and stuff, they were like, oh, Lucifer, Luciferians, So
oh,
there,
interesting. Okay.
so there's many, the correct term that has been there for thousands of years has been the Lumiere, and they take the title of Lumiere, which is like light, like lumen, light bringer. Um, but like, and there is something to that, I will say. Without spoiling anything, there is even though they mostly control the powers of like shadows and undeath and like zombification and all this like occultish stuff, like they're not just doing what they do because they're Sauron and they're evil. You know, they all have a goal. Every single faction and everything has a very specific goal regarding the future of the afterlife as a whole, and it
Sure.
extends past Universe 8. We're talking like big picture, like everything, you know. But yeah,
Okay.
so prophecy, the Lumiere guys, I shouldn't say the Lumiere are showing up. Like
So,
they're
and I think
but
that I'd have to. Where's my phone? I have to look at my notes really quick, but I think. Let me see here.